liberty, and justice for
Justice
all.
for all.
And if you please join us in a moment of silence as we reflect on those serving the United States Armed Forces, both past and present, the elected leaders for the state of Pennsylvania and elected leaders of our nation. We have much to be thankful for in our community. All right, you may be seated. All right, item 3, executive session announcement. The Board of School Directors met on the following dates in executive session to discuss items in one or more of the following areas: safety and personnel matters, June 29th, July 8th, and July 20th, 2020. All right, item 4, superintendent's report. Dr. Lloyd.
Thank you, Ms. Robert. So I want to start by thanking all of our parents and staff who participated in our health and safety feedback survey. We had a response rate for families of 35%, along with over 50% of our employees providing their input. Last week, over 350 parents participated in the 14 school-based focus groups that were held in person or online. We are grateful for your suggestions and input into developing our fall health and safety plan. If you were not able to attend, you can view a recording of the school-based virtual focus groups by visiting the website of each school and clicking on the link titled Health and Safety Plan Focus Group Presentation. Middle school is the only school that video is not up yet, but it will be up by tomorrow morning for sure. Our extended school year program for special education students is entering its 3rd week. The elementary program has 50 students attending in person and 23 students participating virtually. Teachers and paraprofessionals are connecting synchronously, which is live, with the virtual students during their in-person lessons. Staff have utilized social stories and read-alouds to discuss the importance of hygiene and mask wearing to keep everyone safe. The middle school program began with 11 students live and 13 participating virtually. Teachers have utilized Chromebooks and Google Classroom to provide live lessons to students in class and online. Similarly, to the elementary, the teachers and paraprofessionals are available to students when live lessons are not taking place to answer the questions that they may have. The high school program has been operating smoothly, serving 21 students on campus and another 11 virtually. Students have been actively participating in a series of math, English language arts, social, emotional, and behavioral maintenance activities. The high school is maximizing the benefit of Canvas learning platform while integrating both Zoom and Google interactive activities. These tools allow for staff to stay engaged with students, both in the classroom and at home. They also serve as a connection for the students participating at home to interact with their peers in the classroom. Students joining us for in-person instruction at all schools have been wearing masks and maintaining appropriate physical distance, both in school and on the bus to and from school. Students are encouraged to take mask breaks when seated at their desk and working independently. Staff are utilizing masks and/or face shields, as well as plexiglass dividers for small group instruction. The staff are providing feedback to principals and special education supervisors on the various personal protective equipment that are being utilized, which will help to inform purchasing for the teachers when they return this fall. High school band camp has begun. Just not today because of the heat, but also our voluntary summer workouts twice a week on the main campus at staggered times for basketball, cheerleading, cross country, field hockey, football, soccer, and volleyball are all taking place on the main campus. And I'm very pleased with the efforts of coaches, teachers, and students to adhere to our summer health and safety plan. It appears that everybody is thankful to have something to do and to be able to socialize despite having to be physically distanced. So that leads me to my final comments. Last week, Governor Wolf imposed additional restrictions on Pennsylvanians in an effort to reduce the spread of coronavirus. While those restrictions were primarily directed towards businesses, we need to be mindful of the implications 2 of those restrictions will have on schools. Indoor gatherings, limited 25 people, and 6 foot of physical distance between people. Regardless of being in the green phase, these 2 restrictions combined limit our ability to conduct in-person teaching and learning 5 days a week for all students, should the majority of parents choose to have their children return to school to in-person instruction in the fall. This past week, all parents should have received an email regarding their choices for the fall. I encourage all parents to develop a contingency plan should these restrictive measures remain in place. This concludes my report, Madam President.
Thank you, Dr. Lloyd. All right, before we move on to item 5, which is public comment, I just want to notate that there was an addition today to the agenda under 1210. It's item 15. So if you printed out your agendas ahead of time, I apologize. There is an additional agreement there for CRESS. All right, we're going to move on to item 5, which is public comment. This is informations, proposals, and statements from individuals or delegations pertaining to items on the agenda. Speakers are to indicate your name, township of residence, and the item on the agenda to which your comments are addressed. Speakers will be limited to no more than 3 minutes. Please understand this is not a time for dialogue with the board. Rather, the board will listen to all comments and consider them in future deliberations. Also, if you have any questions for the school board, please note that you can also email the Board of School Directors at schoolboardmembers@ojrsd.net, and you'll receive a written response. So just a guideline for this Zoom meeting, if you would like to make a comment, please use the raise hand function, and when it's your turn to speak, please state your name and township of residence.
This prophet, the first raised hand is Miss Claire Hampton.
Okay.
And
Miss Hampton,
that's
you are
actually,
unmuted.
yep, that's actually Heather McCurry speaking. The sign in is all mixed up still. Heather McCurry from East Coventry, and I would like to talk on a couple of agenda items. The first one is item number 1210, number 15. And as Ms. Prophet mentioned, that appears to have been an add-on onto the agenda. When I looked at it Friday, it was not on there. And so we've talked a lot with this board in hoping that there will be continued transparency. And I actually don't think that that is very transparent, that it was put on and it's buried in item number 15, in item number 12.10. And there were some comments made at the last meeting regarding ratifying items that are put on the agenda, and Robert's rules does allow for the ratification of items in an emergency after a last duly noted meeting, but I don't actually think when there's announcements that go out during this period of pandemic that there's any emergency that they needed to be approved. So I'm concerned about that because most people in the public wouldn't even know that that was on there. The other item is number 12.1, and that's approval of the summer programming and athletics and activities. There seems to be a very high focus on athletics in this district, which is fine, but I'm wondering under this plan, and fine because kids do need social contact, but the majority of people in this district seem to want their kids back in school and in-person contact, and they're not going to have that now. So how is that going to affect the sports? We're going to have sports and we're not going to have in-person schooling, but we're also not going to have revenue coming into this district because we're not going to have any ticket sales when there's no spectators. RA is not going to be conduct their activities to raise money for the kids. And I know that I sent an email to you guys the other week, and I'm just wondering if we're going to get to have any community input on ways to think of go arounds to do this, because I see the plan does not have any students or parents on the input. And I think that at some point you're having to go back to pay to play because everybody's not going to get to participate. There's going to be no revenue. So pay to play was something that came up before, and I think this board has to look at it now at this point. The other thing I wanted to talk about was 11.10, which is ratification of the extracurricular and supplementals. I see a lot of names on here. I see a lot of names that have no experience coaching or advising our children in several topics. One of them is cheerleading, and I brought to this board for the past couple of years the importance of cheerleading. Is last year there were 7 concussions, the year before there were 5 concussions. There's actually under the PIAA safety precautions that need to be taken, and I think that this is a program that needs to be looked at because it also, when we talked about it, is coming under the athletics, but it's not under the athletics unless they compete. And last year, the competition that this team went to was not a real competition under the PIAA.
That's time.
It was, and I will send a follow-up email regarding these topics to you and detailing out the rest of my comment that I do not have time here to say.
I was just going to ask if you could send an email. That would be great, because some of these questions I can't answer to, but I can speak to community input for plans. So we did have community input for our health and safety plan. In terms of athletics and activities, we waited on PIAA's advisement. PIAA, correct me if I'm wrong, Susan, we are still moving forward with athletics. Pay to play, I know from the finance committee standpoint, we are still on our agenda. So if you can send an email, we can follow up with the rest of the things.
Cheerleading coach that was hired is well qualified for the position, and is well qualified to advance our students into a more competitive arena.
Awesome. Okay.
Prophet, the next person is Sergeant D. Sergeant D, if you can give us your name and township of residence. You are unmuted.
Hi, my name is Dina Sargent. I'm sorry, that's my login. East Coventry. I just had a question because I missed part of Dr. Lloyd's statement about Governor Wolf, and there's only allowed to be 25 people inside of a building. So does that mean that students are going virtual this year? Is that what you were trying to say? I was a little lost in your statement and how we were going to go about if we're going back to school. I misunderstood you. So I apologize for kind of bringing it back again. Would you mind repeating that statement if you could at all?
This is that's up to you. This is board comment. I don't know if you wish me to respond now or you want me to wait until the end of the meeting.
I think it's fine.
Okay. And so, what I was saying is that currently the governor has restricted businesses to 25 people in gathering indoors. His directive is to businesses. And so I think that all of us in our community should be paying attention to what the governor is saying, because if this strict requirement would continue, we would have to be making some serious adaptations to what our plans are for the fall. So I am just asking parents to be mindful of what the governor is saying and to be making contingency plans, because things have gotten progressively more restrictive for businesses. Schools aren't in session right now, so they're not saying anything specifically to schools. They're targeting their comments towards businesses, but we'll be prepared for whatever the governor's directives are.
We will be prepared. Is any more public comment?
Mrs. Prophet, we have Brad's iPad mini. Brad, please give us your full name and your township of residence. You are unmuted.
My name is Brad Algio with, I'm in North Coventry. My daughter goes to North Coventry Elementary. I participated in the focus group the other day at North Coventry. And,
Brad, can you tell me which agenda item you're speaking to? I don't mean to cut you off.
I don't really, it more goes back to the question that was just asked about the masks procedures and things like that the school board is pushing as part of that. I don't really know where that falls into on your agenda here. Sorry, I did not remember.
We do have public comment at the end. So this is just for specific agenda items. We do have public comment at the end, and I'd be happy to take it then. I apologize. I just want to make
I apologize for doing out of order. My fault.
No worries. Okay, we'll move you to the end then, okay?
That's fine. Thank you. Sorry.
Thank you.
Mrs. Prophet, there are no more public comment.
All right, so then item 6, board committee reports. So a meeting of the committee of the whole was held on Monday, June 29th, 2020 at 6 p.m. via Zoom. 6.2, Buildings and Grounds Committee, Mrs. Booth.
Good evening and welcome to everyone on this sultry summer evening. Buildings and Grounds last met April 6, 2020. No standalone meetings are scheduled. However, the next scheduled committee of the whole is September 7th, 2020. My Buildings and Grounds update: East Vincent Elementary School PTA Pavilion project is moving forward. Required building materials are expected to be delivered imminently. anticipating a late July construction kickoff. East Coventry Elementary School closeout, long awaited. All governmental agencies have signed off. Outstanding issues are in process of remediation. Dead landscaping once again being one of them. The district will not close out this project until receipt of all warranties. The high school main campus chiller repair remains on schedule. A related agenda item will be discussed below. Summer maintenance projects were reduced to critical need, i.e. broken sidewalks, as well as deep cleaning of all facilities as we move forward under COVID-19 to reopen. Buildings and grounds agenda items this evening are all under new business. Item 12.7, sanitary sewer line recapture and reimbursement agreement. The original land development required East Coventry Township provide partial reimbursement to the district of tap-in fees for public access to the sanitary sewer lines installed and constructed by O&J Roberts. Item 12.8, construction change order number MC-01, 5-Star Mechanical of Westchester, Pennsylvania, regarding demo and removal of kitchen sanitary piping in poor condition and replaced with new while extending the exterior element. Net additional project cost is $14,000. Item 12.9, resolution authorizing district individuals to attend settlement and execute relating documents. This resolution is a result of the July 13th, 2020 Pennsylvania Court approved sales agreement between O&J Roberts School District and Pennsylvania American Water Company of $1.2 million plus a percentage of the district's expenditures. Item 12.10, among the approvals, ratifications, and professional services is the Emergency Systems Service Company of Quakertown, Pennsylvania. This is generally a multi-year contract, but due to COVID-19, it covers all required maintenance reports for the upcoming year only. Thank you, Madam President.
Thank you. All right, item 6.3, the Chester County Intermediate Unit, Mrs. Munson.
The Chester County Intermediate Unit had a board meeting on July 8th. The main event there was the approval of their phased reopening plan for COVID-19. The next meeting for them is August 19th. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Item 6.4, Curriculum and Instruction Committee, Mrs. DiMarino.
Yes, the Curriculum and Instruction Committee met on June 29th as in the committee, the whole meeting, and we had 2 items to discuss. We talked about the application for the flexible instructional days. This was something that we were going to pursue now to reconsider for pandemic situations. And this is an agenda item that we need to approve, 12.3. Dr. Soder will need to make a modification to include details about attendance procedures and access to services. And the other item we talked about was we had an online learning update, and we listened to a presentation about a lot of the digital resources that we are looking at for any kind of virtual instruction that we're going to be doing in the fall. We obviously have a lot of work still that's going on with this topic, and so tomorrow night we will be having a meeting at 6 o'clock for anyone who is interested in hearing about the whole cyber program and the possible hybrid program that we need to be looking at as we go into the fall. So anyone who's interested in all the details about that should attend tomorrow at 6 p.m. And that's all. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Very important meeting tomorrow. Item 6.5, Finance Committee, Mr. Friel.
Thank you. I think the big ticket items here is the district is scheduled to sell bonds to refund a portion of our debt, the 2015 GEO bonds, and that's scheduled for Wednesday. The market right now is very attractive, and once the settlement occurs, we'll be able to report back on the total summary of savings that we have for the bonds. Last week, we finished the Moody's review of the district's credit rating, considering the financial uncertainties of COVID, and they issued the credit opinion maintaining an A rating, specifically pointing out our conservative approach to our financial planning. So just a good heads up, and thank you to the administration and to Jackie's team for continuing to do that. So in uncertain times, that was really good news to see that rating. Agenda item 12.9 includes the district staff to attend settlement on August 31st for the sale of land to PA American Water Company. So that's $1.2 million. That'll be coming as a result of that. So that's another piece of good information that we're able to finally resolve that. And then over the past few weeks, the district has been finalizing placing orders for all the PPE in the upcoming school year for protection of students and staff. And then finally, we're closely monitoring local revenues compared with budget on a monthly basis for the upcoming fiscal year as we start to plan that. In addition, we expect to know a little bit more about the earned income tax credit collections by the end of July for last quarter, which will be sort of a leading indicator for where we go. And as I think Ms. McCurry had brought up and asking about, what are some of the financial plans, specifically pay to play. We agreed to, as part of the finance committee, to put all these revenue and potential things on the agenda for September. We're going to look at that. We're going to look at other revenue once we had a clearer indication of what the impact of the COVID was and the shutdown was on revenues for the school district. It's not going to be perfect. We don't know, but that is going to be on the agenda. So we are going to be looking, but look towards September timeframe for those things. And be happy to answer those questions if you want to send them in an email as well. And that's it for the Finance Committee.
All right, thank you. Moving on to item 6.6, Legislative and Policy Committee, Mr. Melnizak. Oh, Paul, can you unmute him?
Thank you. I don't know. Good evening. The LNP last met June 9th, in which we reviewed many of our sexual harassment policies. Additionally, the Department of Education has come out with new regulations for Title IX, and we will be reviewing how they affect our policies at our next meeting, which is August 10th. We'll have a pre-planning meeting August 6th. So we'll see everybody else at August 10th with lots of information. We do have 2 items on the agenda today. One is to amend One is to amend the policy motion and retention. We had decided to eliminate mathematics every year in the high school at our graduation. And that's about it.
So just to clarify, it used to be a requirement that high school students had 4 years of math, and
Yes.
we had to needing
3. Yes, yes.
I don't want anybody getting overly excited that we've eliminated that.
Yeah, no,
Moving on.
we've got to go to math, not 4 years in a row.
All right, thank you. Moving on to 6.7, Personnel Committee, Mrs. Stutzman.
Personnel Committee has not met since our last meeting. We do have a number of new business items, but all management versus governance matters, so nothing that we needed to meet on outside of this meeting tonight.
Item 6.8, Pupil Services and Special Education Committee, that's me, okay. All right, so it's been quite a busy summer for Pupil Services. The committee met at the Committee of the Whole meeting on June 29th to discuss several topics. First and foremost was a presentation from the Crime Victim Center, which outlined all of the training programs the CVC would be facilitating for the district in order to continue the district's goal of a safe and caring environment. You'll find that on tonight's agenda, an MOU with the CVC to engage in a partnership with Owen J. Roberts for training of facility, administration, staff, and students. And this is way above and beyond what we have done in the past. We really recognized that we wanted to ramp up our education for everyone in the district, including parents. Pupil Services also discussed an updated version of the Summer Health and Safety Plan. Please keep in mind this plan continues to change as our guidelines change. This is on the agenda tonight for board approval again, and we will revisit this as guidance changes. At the Committee of the Whole meeting, the department shared the parent input survey that was to be distributed to parents and this was a few weeks ago. Last week, the district held in-person and virtual focus groups for parents and staff in order to discuss what the fall will look like. A lot of great recommendations came out of these meetings, and I just want to say thank you to all of our parents that participated and our staff as well. It's really important for us as a district to collaborate with our community during this time. We had about 35% parent participation, which is an increase from past participation, and over half of our staff participated as well. Our next pupil services meeting will be tomorrow at 7:30, immediately following the curriculum committee meeting. At this meeting, we will be introducing our first draft of the fall health and safety plan. This is an updated plan from the summer with all of the feedback that we received during our focus groups and all of the changes and guidelines. We will also be meeting in August to continue our discussions about student safety and to discuss diversity. The department has been engaging with an individual named Ali Michael for racial and cultural competency, skills development, and strategic planning. So please stay tuned for that meeting, and that'll be added to the calendar very shortly. All right, 6.9 Technology and Communications Committee, Mrs. Munson.
The Technology and Communications Committee has not met since our last meeting, and we do not have one on the calendar. Thank you, Mrs. Prophet.
Item 7, motion to approve recommended routine matters, consent items 7.2 through 7.9. The board will make a motion to approve the following routine matters, which are items 7.2 through 7.9 as action consent items. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Sorry, I heard Mrs. Booth first. Do I have a second?
So yeah, I'll second it. It's John Deal.
Mr. Deal. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes. Let's see. Item 8.1, motion to approve routine matters, consent items 8.2 through 8.5. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
So moved.
Good deal. Do I have a second?
I'll second, Melissa Booth.
Mrs. Booth. Any discussion? All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes. All right, item 9, board communication. Mrs. Crumrine.
Yes, I have several board communications. And these are board communications that the board secretary is copied on. Those are the ones that I'm sharing with you. And I am summarizing them due to the number of communications that we have. And this is what we have done in the past. The first communication was received on June 14th from Mr. and Mrs. Coster. That was a communication in support of Mr. Ken Paver. The second communication was on June 14th or 15th, and these are from Mrs. McCreary, and there are 4 separate communications, not all on June 15th. And the topics that were discussed in her communications were the health and safety plan and providing documents in a timely fashion, school board transparency, goal setting, the late school start, past meetings, and live school board meetings. The next communication was from Karen Sterner. She shared racism that she has experienced in the past, and she also spoke in support of Dr. Lloyd. The next communication on June 25th was from John, Pam, and Jimmy Wolf. A thank you to Dr. Lloyd for her great leadership, and also a thank you to the members of the school board for being the strong leaders that our school district needs as we move forward. The next communication is from Dana Ciafone, if I'm pronouncing that properly. She is opposed to the hiring of Ms. Hodge. She does support the use of Zoom. She communicated regarding the survey and the reopening plan, as well as some Title I considerations. I think we also have one more communication from Lorraine Scher. She spoke in support of Mr. Don Foy for school board candidate for the vacant position. And those are all the communications that I have this evening.
Okay, thank you. All right, we're going to move on to item 10, which is board discussion. So I actually have a lengthy list, guys. If you don't mind if we move through this list and then we can open it up to everyone, if that's okay.
Mm-hmm.
All right, so first topic, public comment. So we discussed at the committee of the whole on 6/29 how to best move forward with public comment. We really want to be able to answer community questions as much as possible. We had discussed the possibility of redirecting questions to committee chairs as they have more knowledge And then we also discussed how to best follow up with individuals if we're not able to answer questions right away. We discussed 2 options for that: emailing the person after the fact or coming to the next meeting with the answers during our board discussion section. Is everyone still okay with this?
Mhm. I think it sounds like a good plan.
All right. Just wanted to make sure we bring it up at the regular board meeting too, since we have a different audience for each.
Yeah, and Leslie, I just think we talked about too, is just if we tell the public, if to make questions, I know people tend to, when we're not talking back, have a long list to get through. So maybe if we say, hey, we're going to be talking and answering questions, make it a Q&A for this. And that's for the second section, correct?
Second public comment, yeah.
The public comment, the second one?
Yeah.
Okay.
We've also listed, made it easier to find the board email, so that everyone can reach out to the board email if they want a written response. Sometimes that's a little easier to get a response. So that is also on the agenda too. All right, so next item is in-person versus virtual meetings. So we were able to test holding our meetings in the high school LGI and continuing to use the Zoom platforms for our meeting. It is harder if there is a board member that's not present. We really want to continue offering this live virtual option and want to ensure people have the option to make public comment from home. The challenges we are facing is the current guidelines with masks indoors and needing the quarantine after travel to certain places. Just wanted to open this back up to everyone. I don't know that any of us are adamantly against holding in-person meetings, but we want to make sure our meetings can be effective for the public.
Right. So if one person did have to quarantine and the rest of us were in a room, do we have the technological solution that would allow to show all participants in that case?
I think the technology committee is going to have to go back and relook at this.
Right.
So interesting, tomorrow night, I think, and maybe Ms. DiMarino, if you're on,
Yep.
we talked about having a curriculum meeting. I'm on vacation right now, so I'm a few hours away in a cabin on a lake. So I'll be participating Zoom, but I think you guys are maybe going forward with it in a live meeting tomorrow. Is that?
Well, we wanted to see if that was something that everyone would be agreeable to. I
Okay.
think that Paul San Francisco said that he could make that happen and have you participate virtually, as well as John, right? John, you are away as well. So if everyone is okay with that, that would mean that for curriculum, it would be Melissa and I, and then anyone who would need to present. And Leslie, I guess you'd be there. I mean, are you always there as the president? But then the other issue is too that there's the pupil services directly after, and just the pupil services also want to try this, or what's everyone's feedback on that?
The only thing
I'm really for it if it is workable.
The only thing I want to be cognizant of, and I know we give the option for Zoom, I just want to make sure that we don't spring this on people. I mean, I think because we're giving Zoom as an option, people can still tune in.
And you're saying that board members or committee members would still be able to contribute via Zoom?
Yeah,
I thought
that's what I thought we figured. We figured that it would just be like everyone is on Zoom like we are just right now, except for a few people would be in one room together,
right,
and seeing everyone else on a screen or something. I don't know, Leslie, I didn't see
I
that
thought
set up.
that's what you guys tested and it didn't work.
So we tested it. The only challenge was if the board member is not there, the way that we have it set up, like we would have to put it on the projector in the LGI to bring that other board member in. Because
what if you had more than one board member virtual? Like tomorrow we'll have Paul and John virtual.
So Paul, I think, was able to put everyone up. The problem is when you get more attendance in the meeting, you can't I don't think you can pinpoint specific people to be up on the screen, right, Paul?
So we did figure that out, and we
Okay.
can try that out for tomorrow
Okay.
night. That just have the 2 board members' videos on and on the screen in the back, and then the public will still be present, but not on the screen. But when it's time for public comment, we'd unmute them and try that tomorrow night if that's what the board wishes.
So now would you open this up to public being able to attend?
It would still be on Zoom.
I mean, in person.
Right, they can't do it in person. No, it would just be board members here and the public in Zoom.
I think it would be a good opportunity to give a first go at this combined messaging. I just think it would be a good opportunity to do so. I feel this is a very important curriculum meeting as well, and I would personally prefer to do it in person, but it's up to the rest of the board. I just think it's a good opportunity to give it a try.
I think a committee meeting is a better opportunity to try, for sure.
Mhm.
Yeah, since
Yeah,
it is a
exactly.
smaller agenda and
Right.
we just thought Ms. DiMarino wanted to try it in person. So whatever the board wishes, we can make work for tomorrow.
Okay.
But the
Yeah,
public would still attend via Zoom and have public comment if that's what we open up to. We can still do the same way that we're
Yeah,
doing.
I mean, so Paul, like I'm going to be remote. I'd still be participating just like I am
Mhm.
now. And then
Right,
just, but one of these screens would have 4 people on it or whatever, or 3 or whoever's attending in person, right?
Correct. There's an option to just do show people that have video on, and just the people, the board members would be on, and everybody else would still be listening and viewing it at home.
I think we should give it I mean, if everybody's okay with it, I'm cool with giving it a shot.
So then my only
Yeah.
question then is with masks, like, is it that if you're speaking, you don't have to wear one? Like, I've read it, but
Typically, if you're 6 feet apart,
Right.
you don't have to have the mask on. If you're,
Correct.
yeah, if you're sitting 6 feet apart, okay.
I think we can space ourselves far
And
more
since
than
it's such a
probably-
limited amount of board members, we can space that room and get everybody in the camera that
Okay.
everybody would be on.
you should
And
do
don't
something
How
to be safe.
well would audience members be able to see those people if they're 6 feet apart and we'll have to figure out how many of them. Is that going to be effective for the audience to be able to see people's faces?
So I think it's the same visual if you came to a school board meeting, right? You're not
Right.
going to see everyone's face like you are right now with Zoom.
Right.
So it's,
The audio is very good because the microphones are all connected to the Zoom. So you'll be able to hear everybody, and you'll be able to touch the mic on and off and do like we do in regular board meetings.
Okay, that's good, because I think at one point you had told me that there was a problem with the audio potentially with Zoom and feedback.
Yeah, we worked 2 days on this, and we tested it with Mr. Deal and Mrs. Prophet, and it worked out well.
And looking forward, if we were to have the full contingent, all 10 of us, could you guys just give us an idea, Paul, of whether that's possible to be spaced? And so you all know, not only my personal circumstance also, often mandates I'm in different states. Therefore, there's 18 states, I think, right now on this recommended quarantine list. I'd be with you all Thursday night if you wanted to. Mask, no mask, you tell me where to sit. I'll sit across from the room from you if you want me to. But the fact of the matter is, I don't want to make any of you uncomfortable or any members of the public. So I will defer to whatever the board recommends.
During these committee meetings, there's usually 4 committee people, but usually more than the 4 of those members attend. Where do we put the other board members who aren't actually on the committee?
they don't need to be on screen.
How could they usually interact? So will the mic be open so they can interact?
Can raise our hand.
Yeah.
Yeah, like the public.
Raise your hand or use the raise your hand button.
Raise the hand button, because if I do this and I'm not on video, you'll never see me.
There you That's why you're.
But I think with 2 committees, we do have the potential for somebody to be on one committee and not on the other. So they would be there in the room and wouldn't have a microphone. And so they have to go to a different room to join the Zoom?
No, I would assume whoever wants to stay in the meeting could stay in the meeting in person, or get up and leave if they wish to do so.
Yeah, it's just like any other committee meeting before COVID we did, and we just sat there and did it. And whether we're all, I mean, we all kind of, I mean, Zoom's allowed us all to, participate in these meetings, committee meetings at all times. So I'm with John Deal though. I think this, if you're traveling, if you're doing things, it allows you to participate fully. So whatever we do when we go back to person, I don't want to drop the Zoom function because it also allows the public, not to have to come to the school and can participate more fully. So you can get a lot more participation and a lot more public input, and people can just log in from the couch. So I really think no matter what I don't care as much about us being in person or not. I find this fine, and I'm happy to come to the school and be in person. I do care that we keep the Zoom or whatever online piece. That to me seems important.
Yeah, I think we definitely need to keep the Zoom. So if I'm going to simplify this for myself, it would be committee members, people in the committee, in a room, all Zooming at the same time.
We're on one Zoom.
On one Zoom,
On
6
Zoom.
feet apart.
Zoom in room.
Wide angle lens.
Yeah, I think that's a good way to ease into things as far as technology constraints, because right now there's 4 of us here in the middle school. We're not having an issue because we're separated. If you put us together, is there going to be an issue? So if there is an issue, we'll just separate.
Yeah.
Right. We'll find out. We'll find out.
If we ever move out of the COVID epidemic,
Ever.
we'll have to. The policy states that you're only allowed to not be present. I think 2 meetings. So if we're out there traveling and we want to do Zoom, then we'll have the policy to allow for that.
We should update that
definitely look at
policy.
that at LNP.
Yeah, it's actually going to be on for next LNP.
So Brian, is that a legal issue, or is that just school board policy?
Yeah, that's just school board policy. And it's a common limitation because they wanted to encourage in-person participation, but there's no legal requirement that you can only miss or can only participate remotely. There's a separate school code provision that if you miss 2 meetings in a row without a proper excuse, you could be removed from the board. But what we're talking about is just being able to participate remotely, and that 2 meeting limitation is just per your discretion.
Got it.
Right. And technology has improved immensely from previous attempts to communicate remotely. So I think Zoom is a good option. And yes, I think we need to review that policy and make some revisions that put forth the function of Zoom that is helpful to everybody.
I want to do a quick second of everything Paul Friel said, especially when it comes to participation of others, because I do think we are getting great numbers, not only because of everything going on, but because it's easy to access this instead of going to the high school or one of the other elementary. And I too am with the board meetings, I make sure I'm able to be there, but with committee meetings, it was very, very difficult for me to get to many of them before, but with Zoom, I'm able to attend. So I would second the whole, we have to keep this as an option moving forward. And I'm not sure we lose much. I think people can see us better now than they can when we're in the LGI. So I think it's a great option for us moving forward.
I think we probably won't be as interesting once the pandemic's over.
Yeah, I think you're right.
I won't have as much gray hair when the pandemic's done.
I'd like to argue that we're always interested.
At least to ourselves.
Especially it's through the center square.
Oh. All right, so we're gonna try the committee meetings tomorrow.
Okay.
In person. We'll see how that goes. If it doesn't work out well, I encourage everyone to bring their own computer so we can hop back in a room and jump on individually.
Okay. I look for Paul to suggest the best room to do that.
Somewhere in the high school, right? Yeah.
Or we just walk over to the middle school.
We'll have the backup ready for you.
Okay.
All right.
Okay, great.
All right.
Okay.
Moving on. So I've got 2 more topics. Committee restructuring. So with the addition of Cliff to the team, we need to talk about how we want to go about restructuring committees. John, I also talked about going back to the LNP committee to have them move some committees to ad hoc and the board policy. I think that John also had a discussion with John M. that this happens but wasn't updated. I'm not sure. We can revisit on that. But Just also wanted to see if there's interest in conducting another survey to gauge continued interest. And then also just keep in mind, once we do restructure, we will need to begin working on scheduling public meetings to begin discussions about committee goals for the coming year. So lots of topics in that.
We're
one.
going to reorganize anyway in December, is that right?
We do
We
reorganize
do.
in December, yeah.
So
And Leslie, my conversation with John M., just to be clear, was on extracurricular and is it extracurricular and interscholastic?
Yes.
And Lydia had same feedback, which was we've already kind of moved that policy through on that committee specifically. But John shared with me, and he can share now, that it just hasn't been updated yet in the written policy guidelines. But I think that one's done. The other discussions would have to be discussed at LMP.
Yeah, Dr. Martini said that he needs some footnotes from PSBA first before the final version on the website.
Okay.
But I&E is officially gone.
Okay.
Yeah.
So then, do we need to update the policy?
So
I
my
think we-
recollection of the others was that they are de facto ad hoc. We just have to define who's on those committees, but they don't have to have a regular meeting.
So like personnel was the other one.
There were a number of them that were essentially, we define who they are, but they don't have to have a meeting.
You don't have to
Which
have a
essentially
meeting
makes
on
them ad
every one
hoc.
of them at any
Right.
time, whatever you
Right.
call it. It doesn't, it doesn't really matter how it's titled. It's just on need, which is pretty much what we've done. So I think it's a good topic for LMP the next time to kind of square it out.
But I think we did discuss it, and we discussed, the determination was that there was no need to change it because they were already essentially ad hoc committees.
Yeah, so you guys are saying the same thing, that
Yeah.
we,
Right.
Okay.
these are what they are. We'll have them on the agenda. They don't
Mhm.
always have meetings. We have meetings when we need to have meetings and report out on them.
So then we
Correct.
don't need to go back to LMP to discuss.
I don't believe so, because we did
That's
already
the
have.
way, yeah, that's the way the
Yeah.
committees are already defined.
Okay.
Yeah, unless we would want to eliminate others. I haven't even contemplated that, but unless that discussion would want to be made. And
Guess
of
the
course,
question would be if you didn't meet in 2 years, do you need the committee? You just clean it up in policy, but that's, I mean, it's 6 of one, half dozen of the other.
Yeah, I just think we're going to meet, we're going to reorganize anyway in December. So I guess the question is, Cliff, I'd like to hear from you since,
yeah,
what do you want to be on? What committee is interesting to you? Just jump ahead.
Didn't you already answer that?
You just
Oh, I
gotta-
didn't- I don't know.
All right, we'll cut to it.
LNP.
Why
I
is
mean,
it on
obviously,
technology and communications?
I
Yeah, we'll
got a
be-
few spots I could clear
Let
up.
him talk, guys. Let him
I know.
Yeah. Let Cliff talk.
I'm sorry. Yeah, technology and communications. Obviously, that would be a no-brainer for me to choose. I mean, there are several of them that are very interesting, and in the past, I've attended other committee meetings out of interest, but technology and communications obviously would be the way I can contribute the most. So I'll put it that way. For both organizational and educational wise for our students, I think technology and communication would be the obvious choice for me.
Okay. You have any others?
The last time was on curriculum,
Okay.
right? And since given our current state, curriculum is working well with technology. So that would be an obvious choice for me as well.
Okay.
And I'm familiar with curriculum from my previous experience.
Anything else?
We'll keep giving them to you, Cliff.
Exactly. There,
Oh,
yeah,
wait,
we're
wait,
not
wait.
a committee.
You gotta remove me because apparently as president, you're like whatever. You're
Yeah.
on
Yeah.
all committees. So I'm
That's just by practice, Leslie. You don't have to come off all your committees, do you?
But you could come off a couple.
Yeah, I mean, you could come off a couple, but I wouldn't, I don't think, because we're reorganizing in December, I wouldn't make a big upheaval now with you, Leslie. I would say stay, like you chair, the committee you chair, I would say stay on it. Let's get through December and then we'll then revisit the whole thing. But
I think the only thing is I'm concerned about is how many members we can have on a committee.
Correct.
So I
Right.
think we have 4, so we'd have to do
Right.
shuffling.
Oh, we can't.
Yeah, so adding him to those 2 that he just named, Leslie is not on either of those, so we can't
I'm on
just do a sub.
my own curriculum.
Despite my obvious command of technology, I would be happy to sacrifice my role on that committee for
You mean when you never have audio and you use your phone? or
audio, video, you pick it. I'm good.
Okay.
I'm happy to do that.
Leslie, maybe there is at least one of your committees that you would feel that you would want to let
Mhm.
go of, that maybe Cliff would be willing to take your spot in.
Mrs. Prophet, if I could just suggest, Mr. DeFore, when Mr. DeFore and I were speaking today, I think that he would enjoy being on pupil services, given our focus for pupil services being city and equity next year. And he had volunteered, to me anyway, that he was going to help with that.
Yes.
I did say any way I can get involved or help out, I would be more than willing to. So thanks for reminding me of that. Yeah, that one and buildings and grounds, but that one being the priority between the 2. But so that would be, buildings and grounds would be number 4 that I would be interested in. But the first 3 would be a definite interest of mine.
Okay.
Thank you.
I just wasn't sure if you knew that that's the committee that was going to be addressing that.
You know what? That's a good point.
Committee, right?
Yes. Very
All
good
right.
point. Thank you.
So we can take another look at these and figure out who wants to, I guess, remove
Vacate.
themselves, and
Yeah.
we can go from there and get you squeezed in.
Okay.
All right.
Thank you.
Any more discussion on that one, guys? All right. So last one, I said I would bring up again, was delayed start. We had public comment asked about it. I think it was last board meeting, that this was a good time to do it. Just wanted to gauge everyone's feelings before I shared my own.
Why don't you
Well-
share your own?
Yeah, share your own first.
So I just think there was a lot of work that still needed to be done, and my fear is changing something now that won't have as much of an impact until we go back to full time. I'm just concerned about those questions that we had, because we had formed a task force with John Deal spearheading that. So I just think that there's a lot of questions we need to get answered first before we really look at making any major changes. But I will see what the rest of the board wants to do.
I think the task force was the appropriate way to address this, and we got a lot going on now, and I think maybe kick the task force back in gear and do the work now. You know, I know we got so much going on now. It just seems like,
Yeah.
you know.
We don't know what our transportation needs are going to be for this coming year. Certainly wouldn't hurt to keep looking at it, but we really don't even know how many we're going to have to transport, et cetera. So I'm not sure it's that worthy to go into it too deeply, other than not in reinventing, but just kind of getting back together on what tactics we were going to take before we look at it. But I just find it's too unsure at the moment to do anything more than take a look at where we were and where we want to go for the future.
I'm not advocating this, but we do have the opportunity to compare kids who are virtual and essentially their late start
Right.
with kids who are going on the bus. I mean, it's pretty complicated, but we do have that possible data to be looked at. Like how well they do, you know, I don't know.
True.
Yeah, I think there's too many variables there, though, because I mean, we've definitely seen educational studies that show that virtual does not usually produce as good educational outcomes as in person. So I don't know how we would balance that with any evaluation of the difference in start time.
Yeah, it's a good point.
We do have, I sent it to some of you, a survey that was put out by the Radnor group that was looking into the later start, and they put out a survey that we could decide to use or not use, but just to gather information about kids and how, what kind of habits they have when they are in a virtual environment and what they had over our spring. It's a little bit tricky because obviously the kids were not living any kind of normal lives in the spring, but I have talked to just anecdotally a lot of kids and who definitely felt that, wow, I really don't want to be in class at 7:30 because of this experience of having this time where I could work at a time that I felt better about. So it might be worthwhile at least looking at that survey at like maybe a Pupil Services Committee meeting and seeing whether or not we have any use for that survey for students. It's basically a student's, well, actually there's a parent component to that survey too, just to help get parents' feedback and see where we go next. I agree with, it's so tricky with the whole transportation thing, but, honestly, transportation was one of the biggest obstacles. And now thinking that transportation could look so like something completely different altogether, I definitely don't want to miss this opportunity to consider it because, when we're routing buses, if we're changing everything we're doing about routing buses, it might not be a big change to at least eliminate that 7:30 and move it to a little bit of a later time. Obviously that would depend on our other transportation needs, but I would hate to miss that opportunity if we're totally revamping our bus routing to do at least something.
And I would build on that we have an opportunity to capture data on how many students want to start later, because if their parents are adopting a later de facto drop-off because they're bringing their students to school instead of putting them on the bus, if there's any way we can capture the data on when parents are choosing to drop their students off, that could be an interesting data point as well.
What were the key next steps for the task force before we put everything on pause? Because I think that would probably be the most prudent thing to do, really, is to look at for those different work streams, and of those, what could we move forward in an effective way that also doesn't pull us away from the three other main huge objectives we have going right now? Because I do agree we shouldn't lose this opportunity to keep momentum and keep moving things forward and learning from what we're going through. But at the same time, I think we have to be careful about taking too much attention away from some of our other priorities. Not saying it's not priority.
We were at the point of forming several functional committees that we were going to staff with administration and then invite members of the community into it. To be honest, when I try to think about what that even looks like in terms of, some of the options we'll be discussing tomorrow night, I just don't know. I think I personally would have to revisit with Dr. Lloyd, Dr. Soder, coming out of whatever decisions we make following the committee recommendations of tomorrow into August, to say, which of those subcommittees would still make sense to start to think about, right? Like, I don't know how scheduling would impact, at the high school or middle school level. It's one more thing to throw into this whirlwind. So I think if we have some more concrete direction, maybe we could take that next step.
Was the traffic study we had talked about too. And I don't know that we're going to get an accurate read on the traffic study right now.
No, you're right.
No.
We're not.
Yeah. And I was concerned about, John Deal just reminded me of something. We were going to put admin in these ad hoc committees. We're asking our administration and teachers to do an awful lot right now, and probably plan for scenario A, B, C, and D, not knowing which of them are going to be viable. And we don't even know how many kids we can put on a bus per the guidelines. So I just think there's so many points of data that we don't know that'll survive 3 months or 6 months of being valid. And I just cringe when we say, let's ask administration to do one more thing than we're asking them to do right now, which is, oh, by the way, stand up a whole online academy, which, by the way, I think everybody tune in tomorrow night. they've done a fantastic job of planning for this and doing this. So I'm really excited to see what that looks like. And I really think everybody's going to like it. But it's a lot to ask to put one more thing on the plate when we're trying to pull all this stuff off. So I really think it deserves a look. I really do. And I think the data capture that we can do, if there's opportunities, let's do that data capture. But I'm nervous about the admin.
Kathy, your sleep study though, I'll add that because we're gonna plan to have a meeting in the beginning of August, probably after LNP on August 10th, to look at some of the other initiatives that Pupil Services is working on. So I think we can add that in there to have a discussion about, to see if how we want to implement that.
Yeah, we could all look through it and see what people's interest is in it.
Yeah, so those are some of the things that we can definitely do that aren't going to tax too many of our administration or cost, money. Help us get it read.
Yeah, and like, as I was saying, I really think that as we start getting a better look about what transportation is going to be looking like, maybe that's another discussion to have, just whether or not there's any movement that can be done as far as, how should our routing be? And maybe it would even just make sense. I mean, you can change a bell schedule by a little bit without upheaving, a million things, but because we may be doing that anyway. When we look at all what's going to happen, whether we're having hybrid or whatever, it may be a pretty dramatic change. So maybe have that discussion as well.
Right, and I was just, thinking about the staggered drop-off is one of the recommendations for trying to reduce the number of students in a hallway at a time. So, if our schools choose to do staggered drop-off, if we can build the flexibility to allow students who want to come in later, then that gives the students who really feel urgent about it an opportunity.
All right, so I'm gathering everyone's okay to keep moving forward on some of this, but we can't go full force. Like what I've heard. Okay. All right, I'm done. If anyone else wants to bring up any topics.
I think you covered a lot.
I have one question that, and you covered, sorry, my allergies are horrible. I might have to punt to John Deal and ask him to ask for me. Because he and I had a conversation the other day about this, and we wanted to bring it up and ask you guys, this is more of like a newbie member question. So we focus on governance and not management, and we consistently remind ourselves of that, not get too in the weeds, because we have to make sure that we are staying neutral for those times when we're needed to be like a governing body, correct? However, we're also asked to approve, like tonight, lots of personnel assignments, retirements, sabbaticals, you name it. And it feels to us like, I shouldn't say us, John, I'm speaking for you, but please jump in if I misrepresent anything that you and I were talking about. The question we had for each other was, is it more of a financial check mark, or is it really a personnel check mark? Because we're not involved in the day-to-day deliberation management decisions around these things, nor should we be. So I wanted to put that out to members of the board from previous years, as well as administration, and help educate us a little bit on how we should be thinking about those items.
Well, I feel we are basically approving the contract and the financial end of it, and we do rely on our administration to do the legwork and find qualified people. I prefer to keep it that way unless there's a real question that administration may have. We can get too deep into selections when we aren't really the qualified personnel to do so. That's how I would prefer to see us go forward. Not that we should not have comment and discussion on certain aspects such as workforces and individuals, and where there is feedback. I don't think I'm doing that. Are you hearing the feedback?
Yeah.
Okay. I'm not doing it. Okay, and I've kind of lost my train of thought. Basically, I feel we are approving the financial expenditure that administration has used their professional opinion and explored options. If they want to come back to us with options and want direction from us where to go, and if they have options and would like us to weigh in on them, I think that's perfectly appropriate, but I don't think we should get too deeply involved in the weeds. Again, as I said, we are not the professionals in this arena, and I would hope that our administration, we feel they are qualified and professional enough to do the best job they can do. Again, I would welcome any questions on direction or any questions on particular individuals or on particularly which way we would wish to go. That's, after 7 years of this, that's what I feel is best going forward. So everybody else weigh in, please.
Right. I mean, to me, it's a matter of checks and balances as well, right? I think we need to understand what's going on in the management and so that we can govern better, right? So as well as in some cases, the public will come to us with questions and we need to address them and work with the managerial side to resolve anything that needs to be addressed. So generally, that's how I see it. But Melissa, I think you're absolutely right on that half of it. And the other half is being able to govern, is knowing what's going on the management side.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm going to ask Brian to jump in because Brian frequently does board workshops on the difference between governance and management. And so, Brian, if you would just weigh in on this for everyone.
Sure. I mean, legally, the board's required to approve these appointments and these contracts. However, it is, best practice, considered best practice to defer to your administration with respect to the selection of the persons that you're hiring. The board may become a little bit more involved in the creation of positions as opposed to the appointment of the personnel or the selection of the personnel for those positions, and how that ties into the overall curriculum and various programs that the board would like to see implemented in the district. However, the district superintendent is generally viewed as your CEO or the equivalent of a CEO who would be making these personnel recommendations, and those recommendations are entitled to, again, best practice deference by the board, but that doesn't mean that the board doesn't have the right to raise questions when appropriate with respect to those decisions.
The way I've looked at this, Brian, and other boards I've sat on with governance is, our roles and responsibility is to ask and ensure that we're following the proper processes in selecting candidates for positions. So it's not, I don't care who's the coach of this or who the teacher for that is. It's, did we engage a professional and thorough process to bring the best people into our district? So that's sort of the role of the board is, do we have to ask that question? Do we have those processes in place to ensure that we're recruiting from, like, if we want to expand recruiting, we talked about diversity. How are we doing that? Are we expanding recruiting and asking the question to how do we do, asking the admin, how do we do that? And maybe pointing direction that way, but not saying, let's select this teacher, that person. So it's the higher level, process. And then the other part of this, is workforce planning. What are the priorities of the school district in terms of where its workforce should be? Like creating new positions, eliminating positions. Where do we think the dollars and cents, taxpayer dollars, should be spent in the school district? And then ask the experts to execute upon that plan, right? And those experts are the folks that we've hired who have professional experience doing that. So that's the way I look at it, and I feel like that's sort of how I view governance versus who should be selected for this particular position or that particular position. That's management's role.
Okay, thank you. I wanted to just align on that, and I think that's exactly the conversation John and I had, and we're aligned with all that thinking as well. I think it's also, we've been getting a number of questions recently too from the public, which is making me second guess myself around some appointments and such. So that's helpful. Thank you.
I think it was a very good dialogue, and I got the impression that even though we each expressed our viewpoint in a different manner, I think basically we're all basically rather cohesive about those decisions. So I appreciate that dialogue.
Yeah, that's good. Thank you.
All right, anyone else have a topic for board discussion? No? Okay. All right, we're gonna move on to item 11, motion to approve personnel matters consent items 11.2 through 11.16. Do I have a motion?
So moved. Jennifer Munson.
I'll
First.
second it.
All right, so I got Mrs. Munson for my first and Mrs. Stutzman as my second. Any discussion?
The only question I have is when you look at the content of who we're appointing, I noticed like the first group, high school interscholastic activities and high school academic intramural flex activities, it doesn't, in that paragraph that precedes it, it doesn't have the language like we have lower about Governor Wolf's COVID-19 response efforts, reopening of the schools parameters. My only question was, is there a reason why that same disclaimer doesn't apply to those positions?
And
Yeah,
same
I
with
agree with
team
that.
workers and same with the ones that could be flexible. I follow on, John, your sort of concern and point.
Yeah, I agree also on that. If these are situations that don't even occur because of whatever the school looks like in the fall, we really don't want to expend extra dollars on something that doesn't happen. And I know we dealt with it earlier, but I think a disclaimer in there somewhere would be helpful.
So the disclaimer you saw was in,
Like 11.14.
11.1.
okay.
See how in the first group, the high school interscholastic, for example, and then high school academic intramural flex, that if you go down 2 more paragraphs, you'll see the paragraph that starts extracurricular and supplemental interscholastic academic, blah, 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 right, is contingent. And I just wondered, should we adopt that same language for any of this? I mean, I think we all talked about this in the spring. We did. Don't want to be in a position of paying for something that doesn't happen. And my concern is, I think politicians are pretty good at saying kids belong in schools, right? And so they might say kids should play basketball, but they can't pass the ball. They can't run within 3 feet of one another. They can't do this, can't do that. So we don't have basketball, right? And I'm assuming that the language that we have there covers that. If the activity doesn't happen, we just don't want to have to be financially obligated to pay. That's all.
Brian, you wanna weigh in?
Yeah, I would suggest that the Ms. Munson and Ms. Stutzman agree to a friendly amendment that contingency apply to all the extracurricular and supplemental interscholastic academic and athletic activity appointments set forth in 11.10, just for clarification.
And
Okay.
11.11 also, right? Game workers. And I would say any,
Oh, yes, that's correct.
Any of them.
I would say any of them. Can we just make it a blanket statement, any seasonal,
Well, game workers,
broader?
if game workers, if they don't work, they don't get paid.
Right.
Where the other positions are contractual. And so Mr. Subers makes a good point. You just need to make that statement and it can be added in tonight.
Okay.
All right,
Very
so
good.
I will make a motion to approve personnel matters 11.2 through 11.16 with the clarification that for extracurricular and supplemental interscholastic academic and athletic activities appointments,
Good.
the clarification that they are expressly contingent upon Governor Wolf's COVID-19 response efforts, the reopening of schools, and the parameters of the programs as determined by the district as presented.
Second.
Take a deep breath.
So
Jennifer.
sure.
Easy for you to say.
All right, any more discussion?
That was a good call out. Thank you.
Yes, very good call out. All right, all in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes. Dr. Lloyd?
Yes. So we have, I think that's your Suber's microphone that's making that noise. So we have one of our retirees on the call tonight, and that's Michelle Weiler. So Mr. San Francisco, if you would unmute Mrs. Weiler's microphone. She can decide, oh, there she is with her video too. Hi, Mrs. Weiler. So he'll unmute, there you are, you're unmuted now.
Yeah.
Do you have that grandbaby with you?
I don't. He's in Maryland. I'm up at the lake right now, so up in PA.
All right, well, I'm extremely jealous. Mrs. Weiler and I have known each other since our children were toddlers.
Yes.
And now our children have children. And so it is with my great honor that I read this proclamation for you this evening. Whereas Mrs. Weiler, as an employee of the Owen J. Roberts School District for the past 11 years, has made a significant contribution to the students and the district. And whereas Mrs. Weiler has given unselfishly of her time, talent, and energies in serving the youth of our community by performing her job to the best of her ability. And whereas Mrs. Weiler has made a great impact upon the Owen J. Roberts School District now and in the future, and whereas Mrs. Weiler's retirement is richly deserved and recognized as one of high honor and distinction. Therefore, be it resolved that the Owen J. Roberts School Board of School Directors and Administration and fellow employees of the Owen J. Roberts School District express deep appreciation to Mrs. Weiler for 11 years of loyal service and wish Mrs. Weiler good health and continued success in future endeavors. Congratulations, Michelle.
Thank you very much. I appreciate it. I just want to say, working for the district, my children went through the district. So I've been a parent, a taxpayer, and being able to be an employee and work with the staff, work with the students, and work with the parents of my students has been an honor. So thank to all of you, and I'll be thinking of you when you guys start this new adventure in the fall.
Thank you,
Adventure
Michelle.
it will be.
And I wish you all the best and expect pictures of those grandbabies.
Absolutely.
As they grow up. Michelle has served as a speech therapist in our school district. So Michelle, thank you very much. For the benefit of our school board members, I've noticed that many of the teachers that you have approved tonight are on tonight's call. So we want to welcome all of them to the school district and thank you for choosing to teach here at Owen J. Roberts.
Thank you.
Mrs. Profit.
Thank you. Congratulations, Mrs. Weiler, on your
Thank you.
retirement. Very exciting, and it sounds like you're already enjoying it at the lake. So
I am.
All right, so we're gonna move on to item 12, which is new business. So 12.1 is the approval for summer programming and athletics activities health and safety plan. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Second, Mrs. Booth, any discussion?
Mrs. Prophet, I know that this is somewhat confusing for the public and for board members and for my office as well. And so we, as you know, we got out in front with getting our summer health and safety plan in place so that we could begin athletics and we could begin as ESY. So each time a revision is made to the health and safety plan, it must come before the board to be approved. And you can imagine we make frequent changes to the plan as we see what's working or what's not working. And of course, as the governor is changing requirements. So this plan served as the basis for the parent and staff input that we received throughout the week. And I know that there were many questions about wearing masks, and that's mandated now by the governor. And so that does appear in the policy that the board is approving tonight, along with several other things that came out from the health department. So I know it's confusing. We will be looking at the fall plan tomorrow. Thank you.
Yes, like as we've discussed with this plan, this is very fluid and continues to change. So this is just for the summer version. And then tomorrow at the People Services meeting, we will be reviewing the first draft of the fall plan. So
Ms. Prophet, just one question I have, and that, or Dr. Lloyd, really, when does ESY end in terms of the extended school year?
No, I think off the top of my head, I think it's the beginning of August or the second week of August. And then we start kinder camp.
Yeah.
Okay. My only question was, and I don't mean to survey people to death, right? But do we have any means of gaining feedback from teachers, parents about their experience under the health and safety plan, and any affirmation or suggestions for things we should think about?
And so our special education supervisors will be circling back. They specifically asked for the parents that have their children in ESY, they specifically asked them for feedback on the summer plan because they were living that plan, and which serves as the basis for all the others. So yes, we have received feedback on that, and they'll be circling back again as they usually do at the end of ESY anyway.
I think it does stand to, I'm not on the curriculum committee or the pupil services committee, but I know a lot of the work that we do is not exactly our choice, if you will, in terms of some of the mandated recommendations coming from the governor or PDE. And so I think it's important to realize, although we solicit parent input and it's important, it's not something we can always grant just on how people feel about it. I think that, as a public institution, there are recommendations that it's in our best interest to follow, or in some cases carry the mandate of, a governor's order. And so I think it's important to kind of mesh those things where it's strongly suggested we implement versus things where we do have flexibility of choice. So thanks for the work that the team has done.
Just one quick question on this, the ESY in the summer, where the fall athletic sports, they sort of fall into this, right? And then
We're all in this. That's the only way we can be doing it.
Right. Okay. And then, so when this will carry on until we have the fall plan in place, in terms of even when ESY sort of stops in school because of the sports, we're just going to continue this until we have the new fall plan in
I
place.
think this has a date. It was like August 20th or something like that.
It's August 20th, and you have an August 17th board meeting, unless you add another one. But so the new one would go into effect on the 17th. This one expires on the 20th.
Okay, good. All right, that was the nature of the question.
And I think ESY ends August 6th, if I'm not mistaken, because we bumped it back a week.
Sounds right.
I just know when to stop sending my child to school. All right. So we had discussion. Any more discussion? All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Motion passes. All right, item 12.2, approval of policy for second reading. Approval of policy for second reading as recommended by the Legislative and Policy Committee from the June 9th, 2020 meeting. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Was that Mr. Deal?
Second.
Mrs. DiMarino is a second. Any discussion? All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes. 12.3, approval of flexible instruction day application. Approval of flexible instruction day application as presented. Do I have a motion?
Motion
So
approved.
Mr. Friel, do I have a second?
Second, Mrs. Booth.
All in, any discussion?
So this is just a reminder for the board that these flexible instruction days, or they're sometimes called FID, districts can apply for. They can only apply for 5. Dr. Soter and I think we would use these days in the event that we have to close a school. If we have a positive COVID case, we have to close a school, we have to clean the school. Those students that are with us in person would then have a flexible instruction day, meaning they would be online with their teachers. And so that's how we anticipate using these 5 days.
Good usage of the opportunity.
Any more discussion? All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes. 12.4, approval of policies for deletion. Approval of policy 448, anti-harassment policy, 448A, harassment, discrimination, grievance procedures, policy 548, policy 548A, to move to full school board for deletion. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Mr. Friel, do I have a second?
Second.
Mr. Deal, any discussion? I believe from an LMP perspective, these were all already listed in a separate policy, so this was just removing the reiterated language.
Correct.
Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Motion passes. 12.5, approval of early admission. Approval of early admissions to kindergarten for student A as presented. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Mrs. DiMarino, do I have a second?
Second.
Mrs. Munson, any discussion? All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes. 12.6, approval of a memorandum of understanding between the Crime Victims Unit, the Crime Victims Center of Chester County and Owen J. Roberts School District. Approval of a memorandum of understanding between the Crime Victims Center of Chester County and Owen J. Roberts School District as presented. Costs will be paid with federal funds. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Mr. Melnizek, do I have a second?
Second.
Mrs. Booth, any discussion? All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes. 12.7, approval of agreement with East Coventry Township. Approval of the sanitary sewer line recapture and reimbursement agreement with East Coventry Township as presented. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Mrs. Booth, do I have a second?
Second.
Mr. DeFord, any discussion?
I welcome every move towards closure.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes. 12.8, approval of construction change order. Approval of construction change orders for the high school chiller project as presented. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Mrs. Booth, do I have a second?
Second.
Mr. Friel, any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes. 12.9, approval of resolution authorizing individuals to attend settlement and execute documents. Approval of resolution authorizing individuals to attend settlement and execute necessary documents on behalf of the Owen J. Roberts School District in connection with the sale of real property known as parcel 21-192.4 to the Pennsylvania American Water Company as presented. Do I have a motion?
So moved. Hallelujah. Finally.
Second the motion.
Mrs. Booth, first, Mr. Friel, second. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes. 12.10, approval ratification of a professional service agreement. Approval ratification of professional service agreements as presented. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Mr. Malnazek, do I have a second?
Second.
Mrs. DiMarino, any discussion?
Question, similar in nature to our approval of seasonal staff for sports. Do we have in any of these agreements that get out of free jail clause in case of COVID interferes with the ability for us to, us to need any of these professional service agreements? And I don't know if they fall into that category, but do we have any language that protects us?
Mr. Friel, I believe most of these are instructional agreements. And the instruction needs to carry on whether it's virtual or in school, and it's a requirement. So at this point in time, we do not. And the other agreements that are not for educational services, such as Creative Health, we pay for the services in the agreement that we procure. So we don't need the service, we don't pay for it, if that makes sense.
Okay.
And some of those are associated with ESY. So those are actual costs for students.
Okay. Any more discussion?
Well, so this is related to our earlier conversation about governance versus management. If we are approving a contract, does that mean that we are approving the person who is fulfilling that contract?
Contracts are agencies. These are agency contracts. So, and a lot of these are educational service providers or private schools, approved private schools approved for the provision of special education and related services to eligible students under the Individuals with Disabilities Education Act. A number of these contracts are that.
Right. I wasn't so much looking at the school contracts, but agreements to provide a professional that would perform.
Generally, those contracts do have provisions that would give the school district, which would be carried out through the administration, the right to approve personnel assigned, and if the personnel are not working out, to ask to have those persons substituted.
Okay.
That's the way those service contracts are set up, that we retain the right to reject any particular contractor that's assigned to the district if we are not satisfied with the services.
Thank you very much for that clarification.
Any more discussion? All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes. All right. Item 13 is public comment. Information, proposals, and statements from individuals or delegations pertaining to any item. Speakers are to indicate your name and township of residence. Speakers will be limited to no more than 3 minutes. Please understand that this is not a time for dialogue with the board. Rather, the board will listen to all comments and consider them in future deliberations. Also, just a side note, the school board email is listed there as well. And then just a guideline for anyone that wasn't available for the first public comment. We're just asking that you raise your hand with the raise hand function for Zoom. And then when it is your turn, just please speak your name and township of residence.
Mrs. Prophet, the first person is Cynthia Zocali.
Can everybody?
You are unmuted.
Okay, thank you. My name is Cynthia Shapley Zocali, East Vincent Township. As you know, I've been a lifelong resident of the district and the daughter of an Owen J. Roberts English teacher and administrator, and they're both hardcore Republicans like many in the district. And I'm here tonight to talk about the politicking and board members and school employees. Last October, the board, including Mrs. Booth, engaged in heated conversations where it was determined that the school board members should not be politicking on school grounds. There has always been a policy that school employees should not be politicking on school grounds or using any OJR material or platforms to do so. However, this year we've had a very controversial race where board member Mr. Paul Friel is running for state representative as the Democratic candidate, and he has said he will not be giving up his seat on school board if he wins. This is certainly Mr. Friel's right to run, and I applaud him for his courage. I really do. But we now have the current president of the REA Teachers Union, Mr. Mark DeFusco, openly supporting Mr. Friel on social media and his daily goings-on. During this support, Mr. DeFusco is supporting the characterization that Tim Hennessy is simply a lifelong politician and implying Mr. Hennessy has done nothing. This is simply not true. He has worked hard and he has supported the O.J. Roberts schools. However, perhaps Mr. DeFusco needs a reminder again that there are just as many Republicans in the OJR district as there are Democrats. Dr. Lloyd, how do you plan on keeping order and a sense of control for our children for the next several months? These political shenanigans cannot be hidden from our children. They are all aware of it. Last time Trump won in 2016, teachers openly cried in front of their students. It is common knowledge that only political position that is taught at the O.J. Roberts is a liberal left one in the schools. Mr. DeFusco is one of those teachers, despite being a registered Republican. It's bad enough that the past REA president has been arrested for sexual misconduct with a student. I would remind you, the board, that you owe a duty to the children of the district first and the taxpayers second, and your personal agendas have no business spilling into the schools. Thank you.
So just my perspective, we need to keep politics out of the district. I'm not sure, Paul, if you want to say anything because it would address you.
I agree with you 100%, which is why I'm going to focus on school board issues here. And I think every member of this school board so far has been non-political, and I think we should keep it that way.
And Mrs. Prophet, Mr. Subers can comment on teachers' private Facebook pages and their First Amendment right on their Facebook page.
I would just say that teachers do are protected under the First Amendment in expressing on their personal time. Excuse me.
Nope. Mr. Subers is muted right now.
I'm sorry, I was interrupted. The teachers do have the right to, under the First Amendment, to express their opinions on matters of public concern on their private, outside of the scope of their employment. I believe that the board has policies dealing with political speech during the course of their employment, and without looking at that policy, I would surmise that that's prohibited. But on their free time, outside of the scope of their employment, they do have protections on the First Amendment to express their opinions on matters of public concern, so long as it's not interfering with their ability to do their job or the efficient functioning of the school district. And under that test, the teacher would have the right to express opinions regarding pending elections. Again, outside of the scope of their employment.
Thank you, Mr. Subers.
Okay. Mr. San Francisco.
The next person is Miss Colleen Blue. Ms. Blute, you are unmuted.
Thank you, Mr. San Francisco. After watching the high school presentation last week regarding the reopening of school, I was taken aback when one presenter chose to not wear their mask following the recommendations of the CDC and Governor Wolf, that being covering your nose, your mouth, and your chin. Staff needs to set the example for the students and be a role model. Secondly, why wasn't a Zoom presentation used so each staff member did not have to wear their masks and the community could see their faces? Next, why wasn't a tech person running the Q&A session to show a smoother running session, similar to what Mr. San Francisco does at a board meeting? And finally, not allowing all community members to ask questions because of the presentation time sends the wrong message to the community. I think there were 2 or more community members that didn't get a chance to ask a question and were told to email. That to me shows a lack of transparency and commitment by those presenters. Thank you, board members, and please stay safe and healthy.
Thank you, Mrs. Blute. Dr. Lloyd, do you mind if I bring this question to you?
Sure, go ahead. And so, as the board is well aware, we don't have air conditioning in the evenings in our buildings. And so our high school administration was presenting from the high school without air conditioning, and it was quite warm. And so, yes, they did take mask breaks and lower their masks so when they got too hot. I think that they chose to be together because, after all, we have an interim principal who is not familiar with our school, and this was a way that he was learning about the process that we were going to be using. And I think that our high school principals did a pretty good job for the first time that they were running their own Zoom meeting while managing to answer questions and present at the same time. All of us are learning how to use this new technology, and I commend them for giving it a try in a public setting like that.
And then just to go back to community members, So I know that many of those focus groups were surrounding specific schools, but we do absolutely take feedback from the community, and we have been in the past.
The link to the survey is on the main page of the district. And so community members can provide their input there. And many, as the board knows, many people have emailed us directly with their feedback into the plan. And so board has been kind enough to pass those along to me if they have not come to me directly. And we have read them, and where we have been able to implement them, we've included them in the plan.
All right, Mr. San Francisco.
Ms. Cheryl Herzog.
Okay.
Mrs. Herzog, you are unmuted.
Thank you, Paul. Good evening. It's Cheryl Herzog, Warwick Township. As you can probably imagine, I think that this is a very good time to continue to discuss later start times, and so many systems are in flux. Let's just include this one as well. I do appreciate all the work you're doing during this time. And as you continue to work on the plans for the fall, I urge you to consider the many known benefits of later start times for middle school and high school students. I know that you are aware of student mental health challenges that have been exacerbated by the pandemic. Abundant research shows that sufficient sleep has a profoundly beneficial effect on both mental health and physical health, including the immune system. And a strong immune system will certainly be needed now. According to some survey data recently collected and analyzed by the locally based Regional Adolescent Sleep Needs Coalition, the survey that Kathy spoke of, the generally later start times of live instruction during distance learning have better aligned with the biologically driven adolescent sleep-wake cycles and have likely provided students with more nightly sleep and allowing them to be better rested, thus more closely approaching the policy recommendations of numerous national medical organizations that you are aware of that urge secondary schools to begin at 8:30 a.m. or later in the interest of student health. Some key findings from this new survey are 86% of middle school and high school students observed in the survey were getting 8 hours or more of sleep on school days during stay-at-home orders. And if you recall, the American Academy of Pediatrics recommends that teens have 8 to 10 hours. The average sleep was 8.87 hours compared to the pre-stay-at-home national average when 73% of teens got 7 hours or less per school night. 81% of parents reported that their children were more rested during stay-at-home orders compared to before. Of course, I know the stay-at-home conditions are and were complex, and these research findings are not conclusive, but it does seem like there's a likely association with the later start times established during distance learning with these findings and the later start times. As one school administrator from another district has said, there is no going back to normal. We will use this opportunity in our district to make upgrades in our system for the health of all of our students. So whether this district, our district, will be providing in-person learning, distance learning, or both, supporting optimum student sleep health should be a priority. Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Herzog. I always appreciate the education you're able to bring to us. I'm thinking, Kathy, if we add this to people, because I'm speaking to you, Kathy, because you're my vice chair for pupil services. If we add this to pupil services, maybe we want to look at hosting it a different night in August. Originally, I was thinking about August 10th after LNP, but now we're going to add a couple more topics. We might want to have our own night.
Sure.
So we can talk to Dr. Marchini about that. And
Mrs. Herzog, it would be nice, some of those stats you were reading, I couldn't get all of them. You were kind of like breaking up a tiny bit. So I'm wondering if you wouldn't mind sending an email to all of us, just highlighting some of the specifics of that survey. I think that would be really helpful if we had that information kind of in writing as we continue to discuss.
Yep.
I don't know if she hears me. Hopefully she does.
I hear somebody's dog. That's what I hear.
That would be mine.
Uh-huh.
All right.
The next person is Miss Claire Hampton.
I
Ms.
know you're
Hampton.
disappointed. It's Heather again. So, okay. So Heather McCurry from East Coventry. I want to comment, and I think all of you need to review the oath you took to be a school board member. Your duty is actually to the residents in this district. And when you actually vote on something, it means something on the agenda. So while you may leave the day-to-day operations up to the administrators, you actually owe a duty when you're voting on money and staff and items that need attention, like the health plan, the summer health plan. You owe that duty to the residents in this district. There's more than just the admin who are the stakeholders. It's the teachers, it's the students, it's the parents, and it's the community members. And it would be kind of a crazy notion to think that you would all come out and vote yes and agree with everything all the time, because I would bring to your attention Mr. Rott and Mr. Nepaver, and the community expressed a lot of disappointment in the things that went on regarding the two of them. Community input real quick. You don't have any parents or students listed on the actual plan documents. And I noticed that other schools, they have had input. And this kind of ties into another topic, which is goals and committees. I wrote to you guys on goals. I actually forgot I did that. But you need to be setting goals for going forward, because then you could talk about some of those other things like late start and other topics. But the one I want to talk about, which I am very kind of disappointed with, is the elimination of the extracurricular activity. Because most definitely in this time when the activities and the athletics are foremost in this district, because it was the first thing that was approved, there would be no better time than to have this committee. That would mean you would have a separate meeting like pupil services and curriculum where you would talk about these areas, and the advisors would come in, Mr. Richardson and Mr. Cuthbert, and talk and provide updates, and the community could participate. So with the elimination of that, there's no place to talk about this. So I guess I can come every meeting and I will talk about those topics. One of the topics I'd like to bring up is the marching band. A lot of money is being allocated to marching band tonight, and I can assure you that most of the students in this school want to compete. And I checked with Cavalcade Bands, and they are absolutely still running a competition to the best of their ability, the same way that PIAA is running competitions for sports. A couple years ago, well, probably about 4 years ago, about 70 students filled out a petition and they wanted to compete. A couple years after that, students gave interviews and said they wanted to compete. And yet this band stays at a standstill where we're not competing like they used to be and winning competitions. So I think this board owes a duty to go back in and to ask questions as to why they're not, because this is relevant for right now, because I'm trying to understand if you're going to have a marching band and there's no spectators, who that band is playing
That's
for.
time.
Okay, so I'm going to try to address some of these. And then again, if you want to add this in your email, that would be great. And you can always, copy Mrs. Crumrine and she can read it at board communication. So for input for community in the plan, that was what our focus groups were for the fall. And we were able to update some things with that. In terms of the extracurricular committee, I don't know if Mrs. Stutzman, you want to speak to that at all?
We talked about it openly as a board during OMP committee, and then again as a board when it came up for vote, that we weren't getting the topics anymore really that would require or warrant that being a committee. I think there's also some history that was put into consideration, and everybody felt that it wasn't necessary to be standalone, because those items do typically come up at either our, mostly at our finance committee. And then I think there was another one, but anytime if there was something like Mrs. McCurry, you mentioned band, if one of us had a concern about that, or some of the cost of athletics, that those are things that the board would be able to bring up at a committee of the whole, as well as you know, with the finance committee, because that's where those topics end up coming up for the most part. I don't know if anybody else has anything to add from when we talked about it, but thank
Yeah,
you.
Lydia, I'll just chime in to say that when you talked about it, you had first asked about, we can add ad hoc as needed. So as we come on, we weren't eliminating a committee per se, just as it's standalone with, we said, hey, we have the ability to do ad hoc committees as needed. And same with that, we've had discussion about bringing community members onto some committees and doing things, kind of outside just a straight up board committee. And we recently had that, which I think is a great idea. And I agree with Heather's comment that, there are parents that want to be involved and would make great people to bring into committees when we're not just like, we're absolutely talking about doing that for Late Start, but with other things as well, communication, other things. So I do think, and we are hearing that from the community, and we'll do that on an ad hoc basis and not just limit it to board members as well.
And as far as marching band competing, I'm happy to take that back and talk to Dr. Lloyd about it and get back to you. I know that the band probably just wants to be able to play right now. I think everyone just wants to be able to play. So see what this next year looks like.
We've talked about this before, Mrs. Prophet, and that the philosophy has changed, as sometimes does when we have band directors, and we're able to have more students participate because our focus is not all on competition and everybody being the absolute best musician to be able to perform. And so the philosophy has changed. It's a more inclusive philosophy towards music so that more students can participate, and our students that want to compete, there's opportunities for them. We just don't focus our efforts in marching band on competing.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Lloyd.
This is Prophet DLC. DLC, please give your full name and township of residence. You are unmuted.
Hi, Dana Chaffone, East Vincent Township. I just wanted to start by clarifying what was written into the minutes tonight from the email that I sent to the school board earlier last week. Just to clarify, regarding the hiring of Mrs. Hodges, I stated in my email that I respectfully disagreed with Mr. Deal's statement about qualifications beating out optics in this case. I have no problem with Mrs. Hodges' qualifications. I just feel that the board did not meet, per Pennsylvania School Board Association Principles for Governance and Leadership, I don't feel that they met the precept to act ethically, which says to act to avoid actual or perceived conflicts of interest. And I think that that decision falls under the perceived conflicts of interest. So I just wanted to clarify my comments there. I also wanted to ask about when the link to the health and safety survey was added to the website. I was not aware that it was out there, and that was one of the questions I had, is how are we really considering community input if we're just emailing the survey to parents? So if you could let me know when that was added. Thanks to Dr. Lloyd for clarifying what flexible instructional days means, because I'm not sure that the majority of parents understand that. I believe that that's the Act 80 days that are out there. And then my question would be, does that mean we're not held to meeting 180 days of instructional time versus we could meet that through hours as opposed to days? Question about, or just comments about the finance, our restructuring of debt and our bond rating. Our bond rating, I don't believe actually changed. I think that we had a negative watch on our bond rating, and that was due to some, that negative watch was removed, and that's why our bond rating is where it is right now. The one thing that was stated by Moody's in that, which I'll read to you what they said, is that we expect both the district's finances and economy to remain relatively stable despite the onset of the coronavirus pandemic, as the district has realized material savings from school closures in fiscal 2020 and will use that operating surplus to counter any softening of revenue in the near term. So I just think that it was mentioned in previous meetings that because of Corona, and there weren't significant state savings as a result of closures, but this is saying the opposite. So if that could be, somebody could square that up for me so that I can understand where that's, where Moody's is coming from with those comments, that would be great. The last thing is about the Title IX, and I did see that that was added to our district home quick links, and I'm happy to see that, along with associating that with the non-discrimination policy. The one thing that I wanted to state with that is the policy itself does not state anywhere that we are reporting to the principal and I guess the Title IX compliance officer. I think actually both should be receiving that notification. Otherwise, there is no check and balance if those reports of sexual abuse or misconduct are only going to the principal. So first of all, I would say we need
time
there. Okay, thanks.
So lots of questions. I just want to make sure we can address all of them. So I'm going to start in order, guys. For Kelly Hodge, I know, John, that you had made mention of this with your language, but I don't know if Brian, you want to give more detail into it?
Yes, I mean, that concern was communicated to my firm by Mr. Deal, in conjunction with the initial retention of the coverage. And it was our opinion that there wasn't, in fact, no conflict. We're serving as advisors to the board, and Ms. Hodges' investigation or review and in relation to Title IX procedures and the recommendations that she'll be developing are fully consistent with our service as solicitor to the board, to the district and to the Board of School Directors.
And Leslie, I'll just comment. I want to thank Ms. Ciafone for, forgive me if I messed up the pronunciation, but for the respectful way in which she communicated. And I think it's an indication that there are going to be some things that we just don't agree on. And I think it's okay to disagree. And I appreciate the method in which you communicated that. And I would also just point out that it wasn't just my opinion. It was a unanimous agreement on behalf of the board that we believed that that was the right direction for us for a couple of reasons. So, but I do want to thank you for the method in which you communicated.
I think you just took the task on of eloquently stating our opinion for us, John. Okay, so then moving on to the health and safety plan survey on the website. Dr. Lloyd, do you want to share where that's listed?
So it's on the district's homepage.
Okay.
Under quick links. I can't tell you when it was posted, but it was posted at the same time we posted we sent out the email to everybody. Parents received the survey directly, and then it was put there, as well as prominently displaying the Title IX non-discrimination on the homepage, on all of the schools' pages, because that's the new regulations that are coming out from Title IX that go into effect in August. School districts in the state of Pennsylvania are currently waiting for guidance from, actually school boards are waiting for that guidance from PSBA to be able to revise the policy. I know that Dr. Melnizek has that on his list of things to do. And so along with those revisions come a whole host of new positions. So we'll no longer have just one Title IX officer. We will have multiple Title IX officers, investigators that will bring us into compliance with those changes in the law.
So just to piggyback on Title IX, she did ask a question regarding who the complaint would go to. And I apologize, I wasn't clear whether or not it was in policy that she was discussing. I'm not sure if you caught.
So currently our Title IX officer is Danielle Hay. And so when you click on the link, Mrs. Stutzman and I work together with Mrs. Hay to develop that webpage and the information, and then so that we're in compliance with the new laws that are coming out. All of the trainings are to be available to the public. And so right now there's a list of the trainings. As we get the copyright approval from the different agencies, we will be including those links on that webpage. So right now, until the new laws are in place, Mrs. Hay is our Title IX compliance officer, and then the training is scheduled for the administration on being compliance officers as well as investigating these any of those allegations.
Ms. Prophet, I do see Mr. Melnizek is muted, so maybe I'll answer for him if we didn't make this point already, that on August 10th at our L&P meeting, we intend on reviewing Title IX in conjunction with our policies and with the input of Ms. Hodge.
Yes.
All right, let's see.
And I believe, really quick, I believe that the question was something about, I thought I heard about the complaint would only go to the principal, so where's the check and balance? But the complaint would go to the Title IX officer, which would be that check and balance. And another upgrade that we made on the website that's just good to know is in the past, if you went under direct, like if you didn't know where to look and you went under directory to find out who our Title IX officer was, there was nothing to note that. And we now have that as a title under the district's directory so that anybody can quickly find and communicate with Danielle.
They can search Title IX and her name will pop up.
Yep.
Great. Can we make sure that we do that as we are adding, I believe what you're saying is we're adding in Title IX people? Is that correct?
Yeah, so that information will then be added to the webpage. It also be added to all the student handbooks.
Okay.
And then parents need to receive a separate notification in addition to it being in the handbook as well. So
if we search Title IX after that, we should be able to see everyone else that's listed as Title IX as well.
Everybody will be listed there.
Okay. So then flexible instruction days. I don't know if Dr. Soder wants to take a stab at that or if you, Dr. Lloyd.
This is Dr. Soder's baby. Yeah. He's been writing this application, I think, for months now, and some of our local school districts were rejected for their application, so we got some really good feedback so that we could improve our application before submission. So she is the queen of flexible instruction days here.
Flexible instructional days are a little bit different from Act 80 days. So these are what the Department of Education allows school districts to apply for if they have a localized emergency like a snowstorm that prevents students from coming to school, that students can work remotely from home, perhaps similarly to what we actually experienced in the spring. So this is not in lieu of, it's not in lieu of the days, it's actually counting the days and the time that the student would be home working remotely. The application only allows for 5 days in the school calendar year. And so our action tonight with the board allows us to apply for that for the coming school year. And as Dr. Lloyd suggested, we would potentially consider using flexible instructional days if we are approved for that application in the event that we would need to close one or more, but not all of our schools during the coming school year.
So as of right now, all schools in the state of Pennsylvania are required to meet the 180, 900, 990 hour requirements. We do have to submit an application for our Cyber Academy and our blended learning option that folks will be learning about tomorrow, but we are obligated to meet those requirements that are outlined in school code. And the flexible instruction days allows for students to be at home online with their teachers and for those days to count. They did not count this year.
Okay. And then I think the last question was surrounding finance. I don't know, Mr. Friel, if you want to take those on.
Sure. Yeah, I mean, so the question I believe was the savings. I think, and I believe you quoted the full Moody's quote, which gave us some credit for the way we budgeted, taking some of the savings and applying it over the next 3 years. So what we did, there's about $2.7 million worth of savings if you call it what versus budget, what we had budgeted to spend this year versus what we did because of the closure of COVID. Then we looked at our projected shortfalls, which deficit, which is about $2.6 million next year, about $800,000 a year after that, and about $700,000 a year after that. So it's just, a little over $4 million. And then we spread that savings and allocated it over the next 3 years because a couple reasons. One, we don't think this year was going to be the toughest year for the budget. The impact on the revenue from COVID is lagging, so we expect it's probably going to be more difficult next year, even on a budgeting. And we're already starting to, because we're going to have to not only apply those savings, but probably make some cuts to what we thought we were going to have to do here. We won't have a real good handle on revenue until the end of the year. We'll have our first indications probably in September after the August numbers, and we get the earned income tax information in. We get a sense of where we're heading from revenue. So that's why we took a conservative approach. But we know, just like our right off the cuff projecting deficits for the next 3 years, we wanted to make sure that we sort of allocated and didn't give our sense a false sense of security and take all that savings, apply it next year, don't make the cuts necessary, and then we dig ourselves a big hole for the following year. So that was the thinking behind that. And if you go back to our finance committee meetings recordings, you can see this, and there's detail of what I'm talking about. So going a little bit by memory here, but it's about 2.7 million. We applied it for over a 3-year period of time. And we'll have those deficits hopefully made up by what we're going to do budgeting wise in the next year. And again, we'll know revenue a little bit further. So, and luckily, despite that, Moody's took a look at that and gave us and maintained our A rating, even with the refinancing of our debt, which actually is going to save us about $2.7 million over the life of that debt, which that goes on sale tomorrow. At much more favorable interest rates than we have today. So we're lucky that we have a good team working there in finance at ONJ and the administration general to go ahead and make those longer term looks at this thing to help us get through this COVID response over the next 2-3 years.
Dr. Friel, I just wanted to clarify, this is Jackie, the bond sale is on Wednesday.
Wednesday.
Clarification.
All right, if you wanted to buy some bonds, Wednesday's the day. Gotcha.
All right, thank you. And then I'm going to apologize. I think I'm going to butcher your name too. Mrs. Ciafone, if you have any further questions, we didn't answer something, please feel free to reach out to us and we will respond back to you.
Okay, the next person, Mrs. Prophet, is iPhone. iPhone, please let your name and township of residence.
iPhone, okay.
You are unmuted.
Hi, yes. My name's Jem Wunderlich from East Coventry Township. My question is, my daughter's a senior next year, or this coming year, sorry. I just am concerned about her missing out on not senior activities, but she goes to full-time tech. And as far as just say senior photos, some people had gotten emails back in June about the photos for in August. I'm just using that as an example. We never got that email. And I know that being full-time tech, we miss out on emails sometimes. Communication is not the best for anyone going to the VOTEC. And I was just wondering if there was any sort of way to set up emails just for specifically full-time tech students, so that way we don't miss out on anything. I know this year's gonna look different and there's probably not gonna be as many senior things happening, but I would just like to see if there was any possible way to make it so that way we're not excluded from anything that would be happening. And that's all. Thank you.
Thank you. So funny story. This is actually, John Deal and I have a running to-do list. And this is actually one of those things on our to-do list is understanding the communication with the tech students. So I don't know if we have an easy answer to that tonight, or if it's something that we are currently working on. Dr. Lloyd, I don't know.
One of the tech students emailed me today, and the high school is trying to track this down. What's challenging, I know that Mr. San Francisco's department worked on this to try to remedy it for Skylert messaging, because they no longer appear in Skyward. So once they go to tech, they're there full time. They're not in our student database because they don't attend school here. So his department created a separate database for communicating with those parents. But that means that when those communications go out, the individual has to use SkyAlert and not SkyWord. And so oftentimes this step is being overlooked. But we were aware that the full-time tech students must not have been communicated regarding photos. And so I know that our interim principal has already started to address this issue at the high school with making sure people get the information and not have to get it secondhand from people. So,
Dr. Lloyd, one thing I think would be helpful for us, and I just don't know where it belongs, workshop, committee meeting, whatever, especially for those of us that are newer to the board, is understanding the relationship between TCHS, the high school, whose students are they, how do we make sure we're providing services that we should be to everybody? Because I see the communication piece as kind of a trickle down of that understanding, and speaking for myself, I'm not real clear on it, and I'd like better understanding.
Mr. Sanford, office tried to come up with a workaround, but it's not 100%. And I think it's because the students are no longer in our database, which is SkyWord.
Is there a reason we can't put them in the database under a different flag or something? I guess, you know, because it kind of feels like we should try to find a workaround before the school year for these tech students. They're still part of the O&J family. I think that's the intent, and that's, you know, what we're trying to accomplish. So I'd really like to see that.
Right. It seems like we should have a technology and communications meeting sometime in August. So Mr. San Francisco, if you can please find a date for scheduling that, and then we can discuss this issue in the committee meeting.
And I'm not even sure that this is the right committee for it, that it's not pupil services, because it might come under attendance and the tracking of students. So it's
okay.
Possibly.
But the complaint that I'm hearing, and I've heard more than once, is a communications complaint.
It's because they're not in SkyAlert, and most of the communications that administrators and guidance counselors do use SkyWord and not SkyAlert. And so they've been manually added into SkyAlert. That was the workaround. So it's too hit and miss. So we have to come up with a different solution for that. And so I'm not sure if it's a technology or if it's a pupil services, because that pupil services is the enrollment of students. So it might be a blend of the two of them.
To Kathy, I'm adding this to pupil services. We're definitely having a meeting on a different night.
Hi, sounds good.
Have a long agenda.
Just as long as not all in one day, I'm okay with that.
You don't want to do it all in one day?
No.
All right, fine. All right, sorry, Mr. Sanford.
No, that can be on the same agenda. Sorry, that can be on the same. I just don't want to do all of it all in one meeting.
That's fine. That's fine.
The next person is Samantha's iPhone. Samantha, just give your full name and township of residence.
Hi, this is Samantha Massey. I'm in East Vincent Township. I actually have just 3 questions. First one is, at the meeting last week with the high school forum, the curriculum forum, Mr. Henkel was introduced, and I really didn't understand what he was introduced, and he was kind of spoken about as being a consultant of sorts. So I'm wondering, is his interim position to provide being a principal in a consultant format, where until something else more permanent is figured out? That's my first question. Second question is, if Title IX person, what's the organizational structure referring to that person sits within? Because if they report to the school board or to Dr. Lloyd, then that really kind of negates that idea of that they're a independent person, as was being talked about before. And then I lost my third question because I didn't write it down. So I'm done. Thank you.
Well, if that third question comes to you, please email us. We're happy to answer. I'm going to give the first question to you, Dr. Lloyd, for Mr. Henkel and his role.
Sure. And so all of the high school, parents of high school students should have received notification that Mr. Henkel, it will be our interim high school principal until Mr. Nepaver returns. And so Mr. Henkel works for CRES, and CRES is affiliated with the Chester County Intermediate Unit. So we are able to hire people to serve interim in between. And so they are typically retired administrators. And so Mr. Henkel is retired administrator. And then they serve on different assignments, typically within our county, since it is Chester County. And they serve on a variety of assignments that districts need, for however long districts need them. And then they go on to the next school district and continue there. So Mr. Henkel will be here as long as we need him to be.
Thank you. And then Mr. Subers, I'm going to throw this Title IX question to you in terms of organizational structure. If you can weigh in on that.
Yeah, I mean, the Title IX position or assignment that was made to Ms. Hodge is different than what is being referred to in your revised and updated policies. Those policies require, and the United States Department of Education amended regulations require the Title IX staff to be part of the school district and part of the administrative structure. And they would be reporting to ultimately to the Board of School Directors. They're not required to be outside third-party neutral investigators. What's required is for you to build this infrastructure, personnel infrastructure within the school district, and they would be answerable to the school board.
Okay. All right, Mr. San Francisco.
That's the end of public comment.
Okay. All right. So on to 14, which is board discussion and follow-up. So just to highlight some of the conversations from public comment, Pupil Services has a lot to add on to their meeting, and so we'll be looking for a different night. Lots going on there. I said we had a busy summer, and we have a very busy summer. I don't know if anyone else has any discussion or follow-up from public comment. No. Okay.
So I guess, does the rest of the board feel that we need a technology and communications meeting then in August to discuss the meeting formats or communications to VOTAC?
I would like to have a meeting.
I think one is warranted, not just specific to technology, but overall communication and what we can do to enhance it.
Yeah. I think especially communication should be a focus this year as we are rapidly changing things with guidelines changing and everything like that. So we need to, communication needs to be top of mind.
And we've been, as you know, Jennifer, talking about how can we enhance like how we communicate on the website. So we should keep that fresh and that dialogue going, I think, as well. And actually, Susan or Paul, San Francisco, I know we were looking, are we getting a new updated website?
Oh, yes, we are.
I'm like, we are, right? When is that coming?
So Ms. Recton and I had a kickoff meeting for the website, and with COVID and everything else, everything is on track. We are setting up deadlines and working with their designers and also cleaning up content on our website that's not going to get carried over. And then we will be coming with the board sometime probably in the fall with the final 2 or 3 designs for the board to pick which the new website will look like. And the mobile app will get rolled out at the same time.
Awesome. Thank you.
Okay, so if anybody has any other specific things that they would like to have on the Technology and Communications Committee agenda, please send them to me. Thank you.
All right, anything else?
Just a quick note. I just want, as we go into the fall and we have the, the online and we have the hybrid full-time, we have a lot of different pieces. I just want to make sure we relook on the personnel and staffing requirements for support, even if it's temporary support, as we have to, stand up. We're asking our teachers and administration to do a lot. And I think the first couple weeks of school, if we have a heavy sort of online, I think I just want to make sure that you guys are coming back to the board, and I know we're all budget conscious, but I want to be smart about it and make sure we have the proper resources in place from a technology support staffing point of view for those first couple of weeks of school with everything that's possibly going on there. So maybe we can cover that tomorrow night, Paul, and the curriculum. I don't know where it belongs, but just throwing it out there was we're talking about technology.
I think we've got a very big meeting tomorrow, so I just want to remind everyone if they can tune in. We'll be talking about curriculum, which is talking about the Cyber Academy and then hybrid options, and then pupil services following, which will be the first draft of the health and safety plan for the fall. So just a reminder for the public.
Short meeting then, we're saying, Leslie, right?
And so, just to reassure you, Mr. Friel, that next year we will be dedicating John Yoder full-time to the high school. I know that I've talked to the board about the different COVID funding that we've received. There is one pot of funding that we may use for temporary positions. And so Mr. Yoder will be supporting the high school full-time with Canvas and their Cyber Academy. And then Mr. Barilla, you'll remember Mr. Barilla was our middle school teacher on assignment last year. This year, the Chromebooks have already arrived. And so Mr. Barilla is going to continue to serve as a teacher on assignment to support the middle school's efforts for their Cyber Academy. And then our academic coaches at our elementary schools have been working all summer to be able to support our elementary teachers that will be teaching in the Cyber Academy. So I feel good about the supports that we have. These are all teacher leaders that are very well respected in their buildings, and their colleagues have been championing them to continue their support since we are, it is so up in the air, and we are launching our OJR Cyber Academy. So our teachers are feeling good about the support that they have, and we have the right people in the right seats in the bus for this one.
No, that's good to hear. I'm pretty excited about what you guys are doing, and look forward to tomorrow night to learn more about this Cyber Academy, because I think it's a pretty exciting thing you guys are doing.
And to clarify on the Chromebooks for 7th graders, I assume that if we have in-person school, they would be distributed at the beginning of the school year. But if somebody's in cyber, then we have an alternate distribution plan?
Yes, we sure do. I see Mr. San Francisco turned his camera back on because he is leading the charge. So you want to jump in?
No matter what happens, we're going to have an August pickup for parents, whether in or not. So me, Mr. Stolzfus, and the high school administration are working on a plan once the Chromebooks are all configured and done, and we're hoping that will be this week. We're gunning for the second week of August to do that pickup and notify parents and do that, and then just have constant pickups to the start of school. And those that don't pick it up, we'll hand it out in school or deliver.
Okay, thank you.
All right, anyone else for discussion? Okay. So 15 is board requests for information. I think everyone's kind of in a good place. Yeah.
We've been getting a lot of information.
There's no shortage of information right now coming out to everybody.
Nope. Okay. So then I'm going to go to item 16 and adjourn the meeting. Thank you, everyone. Have a good
Thank you.
night.
Good night.
Thank you.
night.
Good night,
Thank
everyone.
you.
Viewers.